"Are you sure about this, Mr. Cross?" David, Julian's personal assistant, asked, holding the golden envelope in his hands. "Completely sure. I want Eleanor to see everything she lost," Julian replied, adjusting his tie in front of his office mirror on the 40th floor. "With all due respect, inviting your ex-wife to your wedding seems—" "Did I ask for your opinion?" Julian turned abruptly. "Just make sure that envelope gets into her hands. I want her to see how I've achieved the success we dreamed of together, and that she didn't believe we'd achieve. This wedding will be a statement of who I am now and what we lost when we broke up." Vanessa, his fiancée, walked into the office with a calculated smile. "My love, are you still set on this idea?" "It's not an idea, it's a fact. Eleanor is coming to our wedding." "Julian, don't you think it's a bit childish?" "Childish?" Julian let out a dry laugh. "That woman left me when I needed her most, when I was just starting out, when we lived in a small apartment, and I worked 18 hours a day. Now that I'm one of the most successful businessmen in the country, I want her to see what she missed out on." David tried to intervene one last time. "Sir, the invitations are supposed to go out tomorrow. Hers goes out today, and I want you to deliver it personally to her photography studio." Julian took a golden pen from his pocket and wrote a personal note on the card. "So you can see that life rewards those who take risks and punishes those who give up." "Don't you think you're taking this too far?" Vanessa asked, although her tone suggested more curiosity than concern. "On the contrary, this is just the beginning." Julian sealed the envelope and handed it to David. "I want Eleanor Green to see exactly what it means to have left me 15 years ago. I want her to see the mansion, the cars, the success, everything that could have been hers." What Julian didn't know was that this golden envelope, with its elegant calligraphy and vengeful message, was about to unleash a series of events that would change his life forever. In his arrogance, he couldn't imagine that Eleanor held a secret that would turn his plan for humiliation into the greatest twist of fate in his life. The secret revelation: Eleanor was looking at the golden envelope in her photography studio, while Ethan, her 15-year-old son, adjusted the lens of a camera. "Adjusted the lens of another client, Mom?" the teenager asked without looking up. "Not exactly." Eleanor took a deep breath. "It's an invitation. From your father." Ethan dropped the camera on the table. "My father? The same one who doesn't even know I exist?" "He's getting married," Eleanor said, taking out the invitation. "And he wants me to go to his wedding." "Why?" "To rub his new life in my face." Ethan came closer, his blue eyes, identical to Julian's, shining with indignation. At that moment, Ethan took a crumpled envelope from his backpack. "Speaking of fathers, I got this today. It's the results of my medical tests." Eleanor opened the envelope with trembling hands. Her face paled as she read the diagnosis, the same hereditary heart condition Julian had. "Why did you never tell me my father had heart problems?" Ethan asked. "Because I thought you hadn't inherited them," Eleanor replied, sitting heavily in her chair. "The doctor said you'll need constant monitoring." "Great. Another gift from a father I don't even know," Ethan muttered. Eleanor looked at the invitation, and then at our son. The similarity was astounding. The same blonde hair, the same blue eyes, even the same gestures. "Maybe," Eleanor began, "maybe it's time he knows." "What? You want to go to his wedding?" "I want him to know he has a son. I was always afraid of his reaction, but now I can't wait any longer. You're his firstborn, and he has the resources to help you." "I don't need his money," Ethan protested. "It's not just about money. It's about your health. Your right to know your complete family medical history." The phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was the cardiologist confirming an appointment for the following week. "We're going to that wedding," Eleanor decided. Not for revenge, not for his money, but because it's time for the truth to come out. Ethan was silent for a moment, processing the idea. "Do you think he'll look as much like me as the old photos say?" "We'll see," Eleanor replied, taking the invitation. "The question is..." Are you ready for this? Does it matter if I am? According to this, he said, pointing to the medical results, I don't have many options. Eleanor hugged her son. There are always options, but sometimes the most difficult decisions are the right ones. She picked up her phone and began typing a message, confirming her attendance at the wedding. Julian's revenge was about to turn into something much bigger than he ever imagined. The wedding crash, the Grand Hotel, was buzzing with activity. Julian personally supervised every detail of what promised to be the wedding of the year, while Vanessa gave an interview to a society magazine. Did Eleanor confirm her attendance? Vanessa asked, once the reporters left. Yes, and she asked for an extra seat, Julian replied, checking his phone. She's probably bringing some failed photographer as a date. In their apartment across town, Eleanor was helping Ethan with his tie. I can't believe I'm doing this, Ethan muttered, looking at himself in the mirror. The black suit highlighted his resemblance to Julian even more. Are you nervous? Aren't you? We're going to ruin his perfect wedding. We're not going to ruin anything, Eleanor corrected. We're just going to tell the truth. Eleanor's phone vibrated. It was a message from Mark, her best friend. Are you sure about this? Julian can be very vengeful. Back at the hotel, Julian was receiving his business partners at a pre-wedding dinner. You invited your ex-wife? Mark, his main partner, asked. Isn't that a bit risky? Risky? Julian laughed. What can she do? Take bad photos of the event? Vanessa watched the scene from a distance, nervously playing with her wine glass. She knew something no one else knew, something she had discovered during her investigations into Julian's past. In her hotel room, she pulled out a hidden folder. Inside were photos of Ethan, school newspaper clippings, medical reports. Her private investigator had been very thorough. What do I do? She whispered to herself. If I say something now, he'll cancel the wedding. If I don't say anything. Meanwhile, Ethan was in his room, Googling Julian Cross. Photos of his father appeared in business magazines, social events, tech conferences. It's like looking at me in 20 years, he thought, noticing every gesture, every expression he recognized as his own. Eleanor entered his room. Ready for tomorrow? Mom? What if he hates us? What if he does something to hurt you? He can't hurt us more than keeping this secret, Eleanor replied, sitting next to him. Besides, you have a right to know your story. At the hotel, Julian put the final touches on the main ballroom, satisfied with his plan for humiliation. Tomorrow will be an unforgettable day, he declared to his assistants. He didn't know how right he was. The next day would change not only his life, but everyone involved, in ways none of them could imagine. The inevitable confrontation. The ballroom of the Grand Hotel was gleaming. Guests were beginning to arrive, and Julian, standing next to the makeshift altar, smiled with satisfaction. She's here, David, his assistant, whispered. Eleanor is in the lobby. Perfect. Julian smiled. Make sure she has a front row seat to everything. But the smile froze on his face when Eleanor walked into the ballroom. It wasn't her elegant black dress that caught his attention, nor her serene demeanor. It was the teenager at her side. The murmurs started immediately. The young man was an exact copy of Julian at 15. The same blonde hair, the same piercing blue eyes, even the same way of walking. My God, Mark, Julian's partner, whispered. He's just like you. Julian stood still, his mind making quick calculations. 15 years. The divorce. Eleanor. Vanessa. From her bridal suite, Vanessa watched the scene through a tablet connected to the ballroom cameras. Her hands trembled as she dialed her wedding planner's number. Delay my entrance, she ordered. Something came up. Eleanor and Ethan walked down the central aisle. Guests turned their heads, alternating glances between the teenager and Julian, noticing the undeniable resemblance. It's him, Ethan whispered, seeing his father in person for the first time. Julian took a step forward, his face a mask of confusion and shock. Eleanor, what does this mean? I think you already know, she replied calmly. I'd like to introduce you to Ethan, your son. The silence that followed was deafening. The photographers hired for the wedding began to snap their cameras frantically, capturing the moment the great Julian Cross met his son. My son? Julian's voice sounded distant, unrecognizable. Ethan stepped forward, standing up to his full height. Hi, Dad. The word Dad resonated in the ballroom like thunder. Julian staggered slightly, leaning on a nearby column. This is impossible. Why did you never tell me? Eleanor finished. Maybe because when I left, you said your company was the only thing that mattered. Guests began to murmur louder. David tried desperately to keep reporters out of the ballroom, but it was too late. The news was escaping his control. At that moment, Vanessa appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her wedding dress, with an expression that mixed guilt and determination. Julian, she called, her voice trembling. There's something you need to know. The collapsing empire, the day Julian had planned as his perfect revenge, was quickly turning into the moment that would change his life forever. You knew, Julian said, looking at Vanessa as she walked down the stairs. You knew all this time. I hired an investigator 3 months ago, Vanessa confessed, her voice breaking. I found out everything about Eleanor. And Ethan. I was afraid that if you knew before the wedding, you wouldn't choose me. I thought I could handle it after. And you found out about my son? Julian's voice trembled with rage. When were you planning on telling me? After the wedding, Vanessa replied. I was afraid that if you knew before. What? That I'd cancel the wedding? Julian let out a bitter laugh. Like I'm doing right now? The murmurs in the ballroom increased. Ethan watched the scene with a mix of fascination and horror. Mom, he whispered, I think this was a bad idea. Eleanor squeezed his hand. There's no going back now. Get out, Julian yelled at the guests. The wedding is canceled. Everyone out. David began to escort the guests toward the exit, while the photographers continued to snap their cameras frantically. Julian, Vanessa tried, can we talk about this? Talk? He turned to her. About how you hid the existence of my own son from me. About how you planned to manipulate me. You're not the only one who hid things, Eleanor intervened. You never asked why I really left. Because you chose to leave, Julian yelled. I left because I was pregnant, and you made it very clear that your company was more important than any family. Ethan took a step forward. Could you stop yelling? You're making a scene. Everyone fell silent, surprised by the maturity in his voice. You're right, Julian said, looking at his son as if he were truly seeing him for the first time. This isn't how it should be. Vanessa began to walk up the stairs, tears streaming down her face. I'll go. But Julian, you should know I did it because I was afraid of losing everything. And in the end, I lost it all anyway. I hope you find what you're looking for with them. Julian shook his head. You ruined everything. When Vanessa disappeared, only Julian, Eleanor, Ethan, and a few hotel employees were left in the ballroom. Julian loosened his tie. I need a moment. We have 15 years of lost moments, Ethan said. I think you can take one more. Julian looked at his son, recognizing in him not only his appearance, but also his sharpness. 15 years, Julian repeated, falling into a chair. I have a 15-year-old son. Eleanor took Ethan's arm. We should go. No, Julian said, standing up. Please, stay. I think we have a lot to talk about. A tense conversation. The hotel's private restaurant was empty, except for the three of them. Julian had ordered it to be closed. They could talk in private. Why now? Julian asked, breaking the tense silence. Why not before? Ethan replied before his mother. Because I have your same heart condition. Julian paled. My condition? You inherited it? Yes, Eleanor intervened. We found out recently. He needs specialized medical care. So it's about money, Julian said, his tone turning cold. No, Ethan slammed his fist on the table. I don't need your money. Mom has been able to support me perfectly all these years. Ethan, Eleanor warned. No, Mom. He needs to hear this. Ethan leaned forward. Do you know what it's like to grow up without a father? To see all my friends with their dads at soccer games? At school meetings? Julian swallowed. I didn't have the chance. Because you were too busy building your empire. Ethan raised his voice. Do you know how many times I Googled your name? How many times I saw your photos in magazines? I didn't know you existed. Julian defended himself. Because you never cared to know about Mom after she left. Eleanor tried to calm the situation. Ethan, there are things you don't know. Like what? The teenager challenged. Like he preferred his company to having a family? That's not fair, Julian said. Your mother made the decision to leave without telling me about you. And why do you think I did? Eleanor countered. I told you many times. I wanted a family, not just a husband who lived at the office. It was necessary, Julian insisted. I was building something. And did you achieve it? Ethan interrupted. Congratulations. Do you have everything you wanted? A successful company, money, recognition? Was it worth it? Julian looked at his son, seeing in his eyes the same intensity he saw in the mirror every morning. No, he finally admitted. It wasn't worth it. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with years of absence and reproach. I want to be a part of your life, Julian said softly. If you'll let me. Ethan exchanged a look with his mother before replying. It's not that easy. You can't just show up after 15 years and expect. I know, Julian interrupted. I don't expect anything. He noticed for the first time how similar father and son were, not just in appearance, but in their way of facing things. Maybe, Ethan said finally. We can try, but on my terms. A new Bond Julian's office on the top floor of the corporate building commanded respect. Ethan observed everything with curiosity as he waited, sitting in front of his father's empty desk. Sorry I'm late, Julian said, rushing in. The board meeting ran longer than expected. As always, I guess, Ethan replied with some irony. Julian stopped, recognizing the tone. I'm trying to change that. Why did you want to see me? Julian sat down, taking a tablet from his briefcase. I saw your profile online. Your programming projects are impressive. Ethan sat up, surprised. You saw them? Especially the management system you created for your mom's studio. It's very sophisticated for someone your age. Mom needed something better than Excel to manage her appointments, Ethan explained, trying not to show his pride. It reminds me of when I started. Julian smiled. I also created solutions for everyday problems. I know. I read about your beginnings in a magazine. Julian noticed a program open on Ethan's tablet. Is that Python? Yes, I'm working on a project for school, a heart monitoring system. For your condition? Ethan nodded. I want to create something that helps others with the same problem. Julian got up and walked around the desk. Can I see? For the next hour, father and son immersed themselves in lines of code. Julian pointed out potential improvements, while Ethan explained his vision for the project. This is incredible, Ethan murmured. All of this could be yours someday, Julian said. If you're interested, Ethan tensed. I'm not here for your business empire. I know, Julian replied softly. I'm just saying that the talent runs in the family. They looked at each other, recognizing their connection beyond genetics. Maybe, Ethan conceded. You could help me with the school project. I'd love to, Julian smiled. Same time next week. Only if you don't cancel for a meeting. Julian put a hand on his son's shoulder. I won't. I promise. As Ethan left the office, they both knew something had changed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. But it was a beginning, a shared condition. The cardiologist's waiting room was cold and impersonal. Ethan nervously wiggled his leg, while Eleanor reviewed some documents. Where is he? Ethan muttered, looking at his watch. He'll come, Eleanor replied, though she herself was unsure. Sure. Just then, Julian appeared in the doorway, adjusting his tie. Sorry I'm late to traffic. At least you made it, Ethan said, with a mixture of surprise and relief. "Ethan Cross!" the nurse called. The three of them stood up, creating an awkward moment. Can you both come in?" Ethan asked, surprising both Eleanor and Julian. Dr. Evans greeted them with a serious expression. "I have the results of the latest tests. The heart condition is exactly the same as his father's," the doctor explained. "It will require constant monitoring, limitations on high-intensity sports, adjustments to diet, and a rigorous focus on medication. If we follow the proper treatment, he can lead a full life. But there will be risks we must monitor carefully." "What kind of adjustments?" Julian asked, instinctively moving closer. "Limited sports, controlled diet, regular medication." Ethan paled. "I won't be able to play soccer?" "Not competitively," the doctor replied. "But with the right treatment, you'll be able to lead an almost normal life." "I went through the same thing," Julian intervened. "I learned to adapt." "And how did you handle it?" Ethan asked, genuinely interested. "I channeled my energy into other things, like programming." Eleanor watched the exchange in silence, noticing how this situation, ironically, was bringing father and son closer. "The treatment will be expensive," the doctor warned. "I'll take care of it," Eleanor and Julian said in unison. "We can share the expenses," Julian suggested. Looking at Eleanor, "We can discuss that later," she replied. The doctor continued to explain the treatment. While Ethan processed everything, his condition, inherited from a father he was just beginning to know, was changing his life. "Questions?" the doctor concluded. "Will I be able to have children?" Ethan asked. "Without them inheriting this?" Julian tensed, remembering when he himself had asked that question years ago. "There are options," the doctor assured, "but it's too early to worry about that." Leaving the consultation, the three stood in the hallway, feeling awkward. "Thanks for coming," Ethan finally said to Julian. "It's the least I can do," he replied. "And Ethan, if you need to talk about this, about how to handle it, well, I have experience." For the first time, Ethan saw his father not as the absent businessman, but as someone who understood exactly what he was going through. "Maybe we could talk about it at the next programming session," Ethan suggested. Julian smiled. "That sounds perfect. A new family dynamic." "Did you try restarting the server yet?" Julian asked, leaning over the monitor in the office. 3 times, Ethan replied, frustrated. "The heart monitoring system keeps crashing when I try to sync with the database." It was their 4th programming session together. What began as awkward meetings had turned into productive afternoons. "Let me see the code." Julian pulled his chair closer. His fingers flew over the keyboard, exploring the lines of code Ethan had written. "Here," he pointed. "The problem isn't the server, it's the synchronization loop." Eleanor walked in unannounced, as they had agreed to prevent the sessions from running too long. "Ethan, it's time for your medication," she announced. Julian watched as his son took out an organized pill box. "Side effects?" "Occasional dizziness," Ethan replied. "Nothing I can't handle." "Just like your dad," Eleanor smiled. "Just like mine when I was your age." Julian shifted uncomfortably in his chair. These moments reminded him of everything he had missed. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" Ethan asked suddenly. "Mom is making pasta." Eleanor and Julian exchanged surprised glances. "I don't want to impose," Julian replied. "It's not an imposition if I'm inviting you," Ethan insisted. "Besides, I need you to explain that code error better." "In that case," Julian smiled. "I accept." At Eleanor's apartment, dinner started out tense, but gradually relaxed. Ethan dominated the conversation, talking about his project and his plans to improve it. "You could present it at the school science fair," Eleanor suggested. "Actually," Ethan hesitated, looking at Julian. "I was wondering if you could come. It's next week." Julian put down his fork. "You want me to go?" "Well, you've been helping with the project and—" "I'd love to," Julian interrupted. "What time is it?" 7 p.m. "Will you be able to with your schedule?" "I'll move whatever I have to," Julian promised. Eleanor watched the scene with a mix of emotions. The Julian she saw now was different from the workaholic she had left 15 years ago. "By the way," Ethan added, "Dr. Evans wants to see us next week to adjust the medication." "Schedule the appointment," Julian replied. As they cleared the dishes, Eleanor noticed how Ethan smiled more easily around his father. The wounds were still there, but they were beginning to heal. "Next time," Ethan said as Julian was getting ready to leave, "we could work on the project in your lab." "Whenever you want," Julian replied. "It's your lab too." The word "too" hung in the air, loaded with meaning and possibilities. The new beginning. "Why did you never look for me?" Eleanor asked, sitting across from Julian in the coffee shop near her photography studio. It was the first time they had talked alone since the failed wedding. The coffee between them grew cold, a silent witness to a long postponed conversation. "I did," Julian replied, turning his coffee cup. 3 months after you left, but you had changed your number. You moved. It was as if you had disappeared from the world. Because I needed space. I was pregnant, scared, and you were so obsessed with your company that you didn't even notice something was wrong between us. If you had told me about the pregnancy, what would you have done?" Eleanor interrupted, her voice a mix of pain and frustration. "Given up your midnight meetings, the constant travel, the endless calls. You weren't even present when there wasn't a baby on the way." Julian leaned back in his chair, the weight of the years and mistakes visible on his face. "It was different then. I was young, ambitious. You're still ambitious. But now I know what I lost because of it. 15 years, Eleanor. 15 years of my son's life that won't come back." They fell silent, the bustle of the coffee shop filling the void between them. A waitress came to refill their cups, giving them a moment to compose themselves. "Ethan is excited about the science fair," Eleanor said, changing the subject. "He won't stop working on his project?" "I know. He doesn't stop sending me updates. He's brilliant, Eleanor. You raised him incredibly well. It wasn't easy. There were nights when he was sick and I felt so alone. Moments when he needed a father to talk to, especially when he started asking questions about you." Julian felt each word was a stab of guilt. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That his father was a brilliant man who chose a different path. I never wanted him to hate you, Julian. I just wanted to protect him from the pain of feeling second in someone's priorities. And now, do you trust me with him?" Eleanor looked at him directly, her eyes evaluating the man across from her. "I'm learning to trust the Julian I see now. The one who shows up for medical appointments, the one who cancels meetings to help with a school project, the one who looks at our son as if he were the greatest wonder in the world." "He is," Julian smiled, "and it took me too long to realize it." "Time changes us all," Eleanor replied. "I'm no longer the young idealist you knew, the one who believed that love could conquer everything. No, you're stronger, wiser. You raised an exceptional son all by yourself." "It wasn't easy," she repeated, this time more softly. "I'm sorry," Julian said suddenly, the words coming out as if he had been holding them in for years. "For everything. For not seeing what was in front of me. For choosing my priorities wrong." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I'm sorry, too. Maybe I should have found another way to tell you about the pregnancy. Maybe I should have fought harder." "Do you think it would have been different?" "I don't know. You were so intense with your work. The company was everything. The company was my way of proving my worth," Julian admitted. "My father always said I wouldn't amount to anything. I wanted to prove him wrong." "And you ended up losing everything to prove him wrong." "Not everything," Julian corrected. "Ethan is here, and he's better than any business success I've ever achieved." Eleanor looked at her watch. "I have to get back to the studio. I have a session in half an hour." They stood up, the initial awkwardness replaced by a strange peace, as if they had released a burden they had both carried for years. "Eleanor," Julian called as she turned to leave. "Thank you for raising him so well, for giving him the best of you. "Thank you," she replied, "for being here now, for trying." As they each went their separate ways, they both felt that something had healed. Not everything, but enough to move forward. For Ethan, for themselves, a different kind of triumph. The auditorium was buzzing with activity. Parents, teachers, and students moved among the booths while Ethan nervously adjusted his presentation. The heart monitor glowed on his laptop screen, registering his own anxiety-fueled accelerated heartbeats. "Where is he?" he murmured for the 10th time, alternating glances between his watch and the main entrance. The project he had developed for months, with his father's help, was ready to be presented. Eleanor gently squeezed his shoulder. "He'll come, Ethan," he promised. "Yes, but there's a board meeting today, and he said he'd be here," Eleanor interrupted, though she herself felt doubt growing with each passing minute. The school principal began his rounds, stopping at each project. He was approaching Ethan's booth, his evaluation notebook in hand. The heartbeats on the monitor visibly sped up. "The next project," the principal began, adjusting his glasses. "Sorry I'm late," a familiar voice interrupted. Julian appeared suddenly, his suit wrinkled and his breath heavy. "There was a terrible accident on the main avenue. I had to leave the car and run the last 3 blocks. Ethan's eyes instantly lit up. "You came. I promised you, didn't I?" Julian tried to catch his breath, loosening his tie. "I wouldn't miss this for anything." The principal cleared his throat, getting everyone's attention. "Can we begin with your presentation, young Cross?" Ethan nodded, his confidence restored by his parents' presence. He stood in front of his project and began his explanation. "My project is a real-time heart monitoring system." His voice sounded clear and confident. "Using non-invasive sensors and a machine learning algorithm, the system can detect irregularities and predict possible crises." His hands flew over the keyboard as he demonstrated the different functions. The audience watched fascinated as the program tracked and analyzed heart patterns in real time. "The idea came from a personal need," he continued, his voice slightly lower. "As a patient with a hereditary heart condition." Suddenly, Ethan stumbled, color drained from his face, and his hands began to tremble. "Ethan?" Eleanor took a step forward, concern evident in her voice. I'm okay," he murmured, but his legs gave way under his weight. Julian reacted instantly, catching him before he fell. "Call an ambulance." The monitor on the laptop began to sound alarms, the graphs showing increasingly irregular patterns. Ethan's project was recording his own crisis in real time. "The medicine!" Ethan gasped, his voice barely audible. "In my backpack?" Eleanor frantically searched while Julian held his son, keeping him semi-upright. "Breathe with me," Julian instructed, his voice firm, yet gentle, like Dr. Evans taught us. "Inhale. Exhale." The paramedics arrived in minutes, making their way through the crowd of concerned students and parents. As they lifted Ethan onto the stretcher, the monitor continued to faithfully record about every irregular heartbeat, the project working perfectly, even in the midst of the crisis. "I'll go with him in the ambulance," Julian decided. "Eleanor, follow us in your car." In the ambulance, Julian held his son's hand. His own memories of similar crises in his youth made his heart clench. "I'm sorry," Ethan murmured weakly. "What are you apologizing for?" Julian was relieved to see his son's humor was intact. "You ruined the presentation." Julian let out a nervous laugh. "Are you kidding? Your project worked perfectly. It recorded your crisis in real time, exactly as it was designed to do." Ethan smiled weakly. "I guess so. Besides," Julian added, gently squeezing his hand, "you gave me the scare of my life. I think now I'm officially your father." The ambulance sped toward the hospital, while Ethan's project continued to faithfully monitor every heartbeat of its creator. Father and son united by technology and a condition that, ironically, had brought them closer than ever. The central hospital was unusually busy that night. In the waiting room, Eleanor and Julian sat next to each other, sharing a silence filled with worry. "He's going to be fine," Julian said, more to convince himself than Eleanor. "He's strong, like his mother." Julian glanced at her. "And stubborn, like his father." Dr. Evans appeared in the hallway, still in his white coat. "Lucas is stable," the doctor reported. "The crisis was triggered by a combination of factors: the stress of the presentation, a change in his medication schedule, and the excitement of the moment." "Can we see him?" Eleanor asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes, but one at a time for now. He needs to stay calm and avoid any additional excitement." Julian gestured to Eleanor. "You go first. You're his mother." Eleanor found Ethan in a private room, surrounded by monitors that emitted soft, rhythmic beeps. To her surprise, his laptop was on the bed, and he was typing softly. "What are you doing?" she asked, a mix of amusement and exasperation in her voice. "Comparing the data," Ethan replied without looking up. "The records from my program with the hospitals. The correlation is almost perfect." "You can never stop, can you?" Ethan smiled weakly, just like Dad. Eleanor froze as she heard the word Dad. It was the first time Ethan had referred to Julian that way. When it was Julian's turn, he found his son still engrossed in his data analysis. "You know," Julian said, pulling a chair up to the bed, "I used to do the exact same thing." "What thing?" "Work when I should be resting. Your mother used to get mad about it." Ethan slowly closed the laptop. "I guess I inherited more than just the heart condition, huh?" "Not all inheritances are bad," Julian replied, his voice gentle. "Your determination, your intelligence. But you need to learn to take better care of yourself than I did." "The project worked perfectly," Ethan said, his eyes shining with pride. "During the crisis, it recorded every variation, every irregularity. You created something incredible." Julian sat on the edge of the bed. "But no project, no success, is worth more than your health. Believe me, I learned that the hard way." He looked at Ethan, a workaholic giving advice about balance. "Learn from my mistakes. Don't repeat them." Ethan was silent for a moment, toying with the monitor cable. "Thanks for being here," he murmured, avoiding eye contact. I guess I still don't know how to feel about it. But thanks." Julian felt his own heart skip a beat at that word. "Always," he promised, squeezing his son's hand. "From now on, I'll always be here." When Eleanor returned later, she found a scene she never thought she would see. Julian, asleep in the armchair next to the bed, his hand still holding Ethan's, who was also sleeping peacefully. The heart monitor showed a strong, stable rhythm. She took out her phone and captured the moment, not as the professional photographer she was, but as a mother documenting a miracle she thought she would never witness. On Ethan's monitor screen, the data was still running, recording every beat of a heart that had finally found its rhythm. The new legacy. The sound of boxes being dragged filled the hallway of the elegant building. Ethan watched the movement from the doorway of the new apartment, his laptop under his arm, and a thoughtful expression on his face. "Are you guys really sure about this?" he asked, as another group of movers passed with furniture. "It's the most practical thing," Eleanor replied, organizing some boxes in the kitchen. "We're 10 minutes from the hospital, 5 from school, and 1 floor away from Dad," Ethan completed, still processing the new reality. After the heart crisis, the decision to move into the same building where Julian lived came naturally. Separate apartments, independent lives, but close enough for any emergency. "It's still strange," Ethan muttered, unpacking his computer equipment. Julian appeared at the door, carrying a heavy box. "What's strange?" "This. You two cooperating, living in the same building. It's like a parallel universe." Eleanor and Julian exchanged glances. The last few weeks had transformed their dynamic in a surprising way. "Sometimes," Eleanor said, arranging some books. "People mature. And sometimes, Julian added, connecting some cables, they need a near-death scare to understand what really matters. Ethan set up his monitors, the heart monitoring system running in the background. The program hasn't shown any anomalies in 2 weeks. Impressive, Julian commented. Have you considered patenting it? Actually, Ethan paused. I want to make it open source, so others can use and improve it. Not everyone can afford expensive monitoring systems. Julian smiled proudly. A better man than your father, for sure. Don't start with work now, Eleanor interrupted. There are still a lot of boxes to unpack. The intercom rang, announcing the arrival of the new sofa. I'll go help downstairs, Julian offered, heading for the elevator. When they were alone, Ethan turned to his mother. Are you really okay with all of this? With what, specifically? Living 1 floor away from him, after everything that happened. Eleanor stopped organizing and looked at her son. I'm okay with doing what's best for you. That's not the answer to my question. You're definitely your father's son. She smiled, always straight to the point. Ethan waited, his blue eyes, identical to Julian's, fixed on her. I'm okay, she finally replied. It's not what I imagined for our lives, but maybe it's better this way. People change, Ethan. Your father has changed. Julian returned with the movers and the new sofa. In a few hours, the apartment began to take shape. Should we celebrate with dinner? Julian suggested. No Japanese food, Ethan warned. Too much sodium. Whole wheat pizza, Eleanor proposed. With remote medical supervision from an elevator right away, Ethan joked, pointing upstairs to where Julian lived. As they ordered dinner, the 3 of them realized they had found their own rhythm. It wasn't a traditional family, but it was their family. By the way, Ethan said suddenly, I have an interview tomorrow. The school magazine wants to do an article about the project and how the idea came about. Julian and Eleanor exchanged proud glances. Their son had transformed a complicated genetic inheritance into something positive that could help others. It was a new arrangement, imperfect, but functional. Like the code Ethan loved so much, sometimes the important thing isn't perfection, but making something work in the best possible way. And for the first time in 15 years, they all felt that things were finally working out as they should. The auditorium was packed for graduation. Ethan adjusted his gown while discreetly checking his heart monitor. Now a sleek, miniaturized device, a refined version of his original project. Nervous? Julian asked, approaching with Eleanor. The speech is the easy part, Ethan replied. The news I have for you after. That's what worries me. What news? Eleanor asked. But Ethan was already heading for the podium. A year ago, he began his speech, I presented a project born out of a personal need, a heart condition that, ironically, changed my life in unexpected ways. From their seats, Julian and Eleanor listened with pride. That project not only won awards, Ethan continued, but it's already helping people with the same condition. It taught me that our difficulties can become our strengths. After the ceremony, they met at their favorite cafe. So, Eleanor said, what's the news? Ethan took a deep breath. I was accepted into Stanford University for computer engineering. That's fantastic, Julian exclaimed. And also into UCLA. Silence fell over the table. UCLA? Eleanor asked softly. With a full scholarship. They saw my project at the International Symposium. But what about your condition? Eleanor began. I already looked into it, Ethan interrupted. There's an excellent specialist in Los Angeles, and with my monitoring system, we'll be connected to us. Have you decided? Julian asked. I want to go, Ethan said, but I need to know if you're both okay with it. Julian squeezed his son's shoulder. We'll always be here, a flight away. And a video call away, Eleanor added, holding back tears. It's funny, Ethan smiled, his monitor showing a calm heartbeat. A year ago I barely had a father. Now I have 2 overprotective parents. "For good reason," they replied in unison, causing laughter at the table. The conversation continued, making plans, sharing concerns, and promising frequent visits. It was a new chapter, but Ethan knew his heart, both the physical and the emotional one, was in good hands. What a moving story about how a father and son find their way back to each other. If this narrative about family, forgiveness, and second chances touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with those who might also find hope in this story. Your support helps us continue creating content that brings families together and reminds us that it's never too late to reconnect with our loved ones. We'd love to know what country you're watching from, and if you've ever had a similar experience of family reconciliation. Have you ever transformed a personal challenge into something positive, as Ethan did with his heart condition? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next post.